Welcome guys, I'm Nathan. Today's victims didn't just earn a Darwin Award, they insanely raised the bar so high that future nominees may never catch up. From a desperate robber who sprinted across speeding interstate traffic while clutching stolen cash to a snake handler who held a venomous snake inches from her neck in the worst way possible. It was August 14, 2016, at a toll plaza connected to a busy interstate near Newark, New Jersey. Traffic remained steady throughout the evening as vehicles passed through the toll lanes and continued onto the highway. The area was well lit, and security cameras monitored the booths and surrounding roadway. The person at the center of this story was Romina Mims, a 38-year-old unemployed laborer. People who knew her described her as impulsive. She often focused on whatever goal was directly in front of her without spending much time thinking about what would happen afterward. Romina had been out of steady work for some time and was struggling to keep up with everyday expenses. Bills continued piling up while her savings disappeared. People close to her later described growing financial stress in the weeks leading up to the incident. Instead of finding a long-term solution, Romina became focused on finding a fast way to get cash. I think most people can relate to worrying about money. The pressure Romina was dealing with was real, but the solution she chose only made things worse. She spent several evenings watching the toll plaza because she believed the booths contained enough cash to make the risk worthwhile. After studying traffic patterns and employee routines, she convinced herself she could commit the robbery and escape before anyone stopped her. To avoid connecting her vehicle to the crime, Romina parked on the opposite side of the interstate. The decision created a longer and far more dangerous route back to her car, but she believed it would help her avoid identification. Romina chose speed over planning. After dark, she approached the plaza on foot. Security cameras later showed her entering one of the occupied booths and producing a handgun. She pointed it at the operator and demanded cash from the register. Fearing for their safety, the employee complied. As soon as Romina left, the operator alerted authorities. Romina exited carrying the stolen cash and immediately headed toward the interstate. Her vehicle was parked on the opposite side, and she appeared determined to reach it as quickly as possible. Instead of using the access road, she ran directly into active traffic. Drivers traveling along the interstate suddenly saw a person running between vehicles. Several sounded their horns, while others braked as Romina crossed lane after lane through traffic. Witnesses later reported that she came dangerously close to being hit more than once. One driver braked hard and missed her by only a few feet. Rather than retreat, she continued moving toward the opposite side of the highway. Motorists began calling emergency services after realizing someone was running through highway traffic. Despite the near misses, Romina kept going. Witnesses reported that she continued clutching the stolen cash as she moved between vehicles. She crossed additional lanes and continued toward her vehicle. A second vehicle narrowly avoided striking her. For a brief moment, it appeared she might actually make it across. Seconds later, a different vehicle struck Romina at highway speed. The impact threw her across the roadway. Traffic immediately slowed and stopped around the collision scene as drivers called for help. Emergency responders arrived within minutes, but Romina had suffered catastrophic blunt force injuries. She was pronounced dead at the scene. If there is one thing this story reminds me, it is that the quickest way out of a problem is not always the way that gets you home safely. Investigators later recovered portions of the stolen cash scattered across multiple lanes of the roadway, along with the handgun used during the robbery. Surveillance footage and witness statements confirmed that Romina voluntarily entered active highway traffic while trying to reach the vehicle she had parked across the interstate. The toll booth operator was uninjured. Authorities found no vehicle, roadway, or driver-related factors that contributed to the collision. Because the driver had been traveling lawfully and had no reasonable opportunity to avoid impact, no charges were filed. The case was closed as a fatal robbery-related incident. Romina died from blunt force injuries sustained after being struck by a vehicle during her escape attempt. Romina became so focused on reaching the other side that she stopped paying attention to the danger all around her. The next story starts with someone equally determined to prove that her idea would work. It was July 23, 2017, at Lake Havasu, Arizona. People had gathered along the shoreline to enjoy the warm weather when an unusual challenge began drawing attention. The person at the center of it was Amethyst Hoyle, a 27-year-old seasonal recreation worker. Amethyst loved outdoor activities and had a reputation for creating unusual homemade projects. She especially enjoyed proving people wrong when they doubted her ideas. In the past, she had built several homemade floating devices and tested them near shore. Some worked better than others, but they had given her confidence in her ability to improvise. During the gathering, Amethyst announced that she planned to cross a stretch of open water using a raft she had built entirely from plastic coolers. The raft consisted of several coolers tied together with ropes and straps. The challenge was intended as a solo crossing. A few friends immediately questioned whether the design could handle waves once it got farther from shore. The disagreement quickly drew attention. More people gathered along the shoreline to watch the attempt. The more people doubted her, the more determined she seemed to become. Friends suggested wearing a life jacket during the crossing. Amethyst refused. She believed wearing one would undermine the demonstration because she wanted people to see that she trusted the raft completely. I have definitely had moments where somebody doubted me, and I wanted to prove them wrong. The difference is that most of those moments did not involve open water and a homemade raft. By late morning, dozens of people were watching from the shoreline. Wind was creating moderate waves across the lake, but Amethyst remained committed to the plan. Shortly before noon, she launched the raft. At first, everything appeared to be working. The coolers floated well, and the raft moved steadily away from shore as Amethyst increased the distance between herself and the beach. The thing about making a public challenge is that turning back gets harder once people are watching. Every foot she traveled away from shore probably felt like proof that the raft was working. As she moved farther into open water and well away from the shoreline, the conditions became more challenging. Waves repeatedly washed across the platform. The water shifted the raft's balance and placed stress on the ropes and straps holding everything together. Witnesses later reported seeing one of the coolers break away from the structure. That was the beginning of the failure. Witnesses reported that Amethyst continued trying to stabilize the raft after the first section detached. As the raft continued through the waves, additional connections started coming apart. The coolers themselves remained afloat, but the structure that kept them together was slowly disappearing. The platform twisted and became unstable beneath her feet. Then the raft rolled sharply to one side. Amethyst lost her footing and fell into the lake. By the time the raft failed, she had already traveled a significant distance from both shore and nearby boats. Boaters immediately noticed the emergency and began moving toward her location. In the water, Amethyst attempted to hold on to the separated coolers as they drifted apart. Wind and waves pushed the floating pieces apart, forcing her to move from one section to another. Witnesses observed her repeatedly losing contact with individual coolers as the waves separated her from them. None of the floating sections provided a stable platform large enough for her to climb onto and rest. Witnesses observed her becoming increasingly exhausted as she tried to stay with the drifting flotation pieces. As rescuers closed the distance, she eventually lost contact with the coolers altogether. Moments later, she disappeared beneath the surface. Emergency responders launched a search operation, and divers later located Amethyst underwater not far from the remains of the failed raft. Investigators recovered the separated coolers along with the ropes and straps that had connected them. Witness statements consistently described the raft gradually coming apart as it encountered waves farther from shore. The investigation found no evidence of foul play or medical emergency. Authorities concluded that the homemade raft was not suitable for crossing open water under those conditions. The death was ruled accidental drowning. Amethyst watched the warning signs appear one by one, but kept going anyway. Ian's story begins with another person who ignores every opportunity to turn back. It was October 17, 2018, at a construction site on the outskirts of Houston, Texas. Although workers had left for the evening, parts of the site's electrical system remained energized behind warning signs and protective fencing. The man at the center of this story was Ian Knowles, a 34-year-old scrap metal scavenger and occasional day laborer. Ian was known for searching construction sites after hours looking for materials he could sell. Copper was usually his main target because it could bring in quick cash. According to people who knew him, he often bragged that construction security was easy to get around. A short time before the incident, another scrap collector told Ian about thick copper conductors visible from outside the fencing. The conductors were part of the site's electrical system and looked valuable enough to attract attention. With copper prices increasing, Ian saw an opportunity to make money. After sunset, he arrived carrying gloves, wire cutters, and a backpack. Rather than leave when he saw the warning signs, he walked around the perimeter looking for a way inside. Eventually, he climbed over the fence. Residents living in nearby apartment buildings later reported seeing a man moving through the illuminated construction site. Ian appeared to be heading directly toward a section containing electrical equipment. From outside an inner enclosure, he could already see the copper conductors he had come to collect. I can understand why the copper caught his attention. When money is tight, an easy score can look a lot more tempting than it should. To reach the conductors, Ian crossed a second barrier installed around energized equipment. The extra fencing existed to keep unauthorized people away from dangerous components, but he climbed over it anyway. Once inside, he positioned himself beside the installation and began trying to remove one of the conductors. The copper was firmly bonded to the system and could not be pulled free by hand. Ian tugged on it repeatedly before switching to his cutting tool. When that failed, he continued adjusting his position in an effort to reach the attachment point. The farther he reached into the enclosure, the closer he moved to energize components. That should have been enough to tell him the situation was more dangerous than he expected. But Ian continued. He reached deeper into the enclosure and attempted to place the cutter closer to where the conductor was attached. During that effort, the metal tool contacted a live electrical component. A powerful electrical arc erupted instantly. Witnesses described a bright flash that lit up the area and drew attention from surrounding buildings. The arc produced an intense burst of heat and energy. At the same time, the force of the blast threw Ian backward onto the gravel several feet away. The heat generated by the event was extreme. Portions of his clothing ignited, and he suffered catastrophic burn injuries. Several people immediately called emergency services after seeing the flash and the aftermath. There are so many moments in this story where Ian could have turned around, climbing the first fence, crossing the second barrier, getting closer and closer to energized equipment. Every one of those moments was a chance to leave. Responders arrived a short time later, but Ian's injuries were unsurvivable. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators documented severe electrical damage at the point of contact. Witness statements helped establish the sequence of events. Physical evidence showed that Ian entered multiple restricted areas while attempting to remove copper from the energized installation. After the investigation, officials concluded that Ian trespassed into restricted sections of the site and attempted to steal copper conductors connected to energized equipment. Based on witness accounts, physical evidence, and damage at the scene, investigators determined that his metal cutting tool contacted a live electrical component, triggering the arc flash that caused his fatal injuries. The death was ruled an accidental electrocution during an attempted theft. We've got more unbelievable Darwin Award disasters coming up, so hit that subscribe button if you want to see how some of the worst decisions imaginable ended in the most shocking ways possible. It was February 11th, 2020, inside a manufacturing facility in Amarillo, Texas. Employees were expected to use designated walkways that kept them away from moving conveyor systems. One of the employees working that day was Tamara Galt, a 41-year-old industrial maintenance technician. She had spent years around production equipment and knew the facility well. Co-workers viewed her as experienced and confident. They also knew she had a habit of taking shortcuts whenever she thought it would save a little time. Over the years, Tamara had developed a routine of crossing through equipment areas rather than using approved walkways. She often stepped over inactive conveyors instead of walking around them. According to co-workers, she had also been seen crossing near operating equipment on other occasions. Nothing ever went wrong. After doing it successfully so many times, the shortcut became part of her normal workday. Co-workers saw it often enough that most barely reacted anymore. It was simply something Tamara did. On the day of the incident, she was carrying paperwork and a few small tools while moving between work areas. To reach her destination, she could either follow the designated route around a production line or take a much shorter path across a conveyor system standing between her and where she needed to go. Unlike many of the conveyors she had crossed in the past, this one was operating and slowly moving materials along the belt. Surveillance footage later showed Tamara approaching the conveyor and stopping briefly near it. She appeared to look at the moving belt before making her decision. No employees were close enough to reach her before she attempted the shortcut. Instead of heading toward the approved crossing point, Tamara chose the shortcut. She had crossed similar areas so many times that the moving belt may not have seemed like a major obstacle. Rather than walk around the line, she placed one foot onto the conveyor while attempting to cross over it. As the belt continued moving beneath her foot, her balance shifted unexpectedly while she tried to step over part of the conveyor structure. The movement threw off her footing. As she attempted to recover, one foot slipped into a gap where moving parts came together and became trapped. The trapped foot immediately pulled her off balance and drew her into the equipment. Within moments, the conveyor dragged more of her lower body into the machinery as she struggled to free herself. Workers farther down the production line heard shouting and turned toward the conveyor. By the time they realized what was happening, Tamara had already become severely entangled. Several employees immediately ran toward the nearest emergency stop station. I have worked in places where people develop little routines like this. After enough days go by without anything bad happening, the shortcut starts feeling like part of the job instead of a risk. The shutdown system was activated as soon as workers reached it. Even after the stop control was pressed, the conveyor continued moving briefly before gradually coming to a halt. The remaining movement of the belt tightened the entrapment before the system finally stopped. Employees rushed to help while emergency services were called. Responders arrived within minutes, but the injuries caused by the entrapment were catastrophic. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage and interviewed co-workers. The video showed Tamara voluntarily attempting to cross the operating conveyor instead of using a designated crossing point. Employees confirmed that she had relied on similar shortcuts for years. Inspectors found no evidence of equipment failure or mechanical defects. The conveyor and emergency stop system were functioning properly. What makes this case so difficult to hear is that nothing had to malfunction. Everything worked exactly as intended, except for the choice to enter an area that was never meant to be crossed. Based on video evidence, witness statements, and inspection findings, investigators concluded that the fatal sequence began when Tamara entered an active conveyor system instead of using a designated walkway. Her death was ruled accidental, with the cause identified as crushing injuries sustained after becoming trapped in moving machinery. For Tamara, the shortcut had worked so many times that it no longer felt risky. Up next is a content creator whose confidence grew with every successful video. It was May 29, 2021, at a private outdoor reptile enclosure in Ocala, Florida. The fenced area was used for handling and filming snakes. A small group of reptile enthusiasts had gathered there that day to watch a venom extraction demonstration being recorded for social media. The person leading the demonstration was Fiona Swinney, a 29-year-old reptile enthusiast and online content creator. Fiona had built a following by posting videos of herself handling dangerous animals. Many viewers enjoyed seeing close-up footage that most people would never attempt to capture themselves. Over time, however, her videos became increasingly extreme. What began as educational demonstrations gradually shifted toward more dramatic content designed to attract attention online. In the weeks leading up to the filming session, several of Fiona's recent videos had received fewer views than expected. According to friends, she had become increasingly focused on producing footage that would stand out from other reptile videos on social media. That day, Fiona planned to film a venom extraction involving a highly venomous snake. A friend operated the camera while several reptile enthusiasts watched nearby. The others remained outside the immediate handling area while Fiona performed the demonstration herself. The enclosure contained handling equipment that could have created additional distance between Fiona and the snake. Hooks, restraints, and other tools were available and commonly used during venom extractions. Fiona chose not to use them because she believed they would block the close-up shots she wanted and make the video less impressive. Most of the people present had seen Fiona work with venomous snakes before and assumed she understood the risks better than they did. As filming began, Fiona held the snake while explaining the extraction process. The animal repeatedly twisted, pulled away, and attempted to free itself. Each time, Fiona adjusted her grip and continued. As the session went on, the snake became increasingly difficult to manage. Several observers later stated that the animal appeared more agitated than it had at the beginning of the demonstration. At one point, a spectator suggested taking a moment to regain control before continuing, but Fiona declined and kept filming. I can see why Fiona thought she could get away with it. She had done this before, and every successful video probably made the next risk feel a little less dangerous. Minutes later, another observer suggested using one of the nearby handling tools to make the process safer. Once again, Fiona declined. She appeared confident that she could finish the demonstration the same way she had in previous videos. By that point, Fiona had already captured most of the footage she came to record, and the extraction demonstration was essentially complete. Instead of ending the session, she continued filming in hopes of getting a few additional shots for social media. Witnesses later stated that she repositioned the snake several times to create more dramatic camera angles, while the animal continued struggling to break free. According to those present, Fiona eventually lifted the snake beside her face and shoulder so the camera could capture a tighter image for a thumbnail and promotional clips. The snake was now only inches from her neck. Several people watching later admitted they felt uncomfortable with how close she had brought the animal to her face. Fiona continued anyway. As she adjusted her grip for the camera, she briefly lost control of the snake's head. The opening lasted only a fraction of a second, but it was enough. The snake struck. Its fangs sank into the side of Fiona's neck before anyone could react. The bite occurred directly in front of the camera lens. The snake immediately recoiled as Fiona released it and stumbled backward. Filming stopped as the people around her rushed to help and called emergency services. And just like that, the video she was trying so hard to perfect became the last thing anyone cared about. Responders arrived quickly and transported Fiona for advanced medical treatment. Because the bite had occurred in her neck, the venom entered her body rapidly and created a severe medical emergency. Despite treatment efforts, doctors were unable to reverse the damage caused by the venom. Fiona died later from the complications of the bite. The death was ruled accidental. Investigators concluded that Fiona continued handling the venomous snake despite warning signs, rejected safer methods, and brought the animal near her face for additional footage after the demonstration was essentially complete.